Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are you? Well, it finally happened. The Black Second Edition is now available up at Amazon in both ebook and trade paperback. If you'd like a signed, personalized trade paperback copy of The Black Second Edition, which includes the ebook, visit my store. You can find the link in the show notes, and order one soon. Purchases made from my store result in me earning up to 90% of the profit. Just something to keep in mind. The Fireside audio performance of The Black will be available in August, with a pre-order beginning fairly soon. I'll give you all dates for that next week. And in keeping with news about The Black, I finished the first draft of The Black Oceania Wednesday night. I spent Thursday editing and recording several chapters, now that my voice has somewhat recovered. All in all, a good week, and my Patreon, Ko-Fi, Buy Me a Coffee folks will be getting the new episodes in a pretty damn timely fashion now. For those of you that enjoy the Derelict Saga, I now have a complete audiobook collection for the 4 novels up at my store as well, so be sure and give that a look-see. With that, I'm going to get out of here and back to recording Oceania. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 9 of Station 3. Chapter 9. The lift rose from the junction level with a grinding sound that set Zilf's nerves on edge. It shouldn't be making that sound, especially not since this facility wasn't that old. He didn't believe for a second that Zhao Tu's engineers had let maintenance slip this bad. Plus, what could possibly be grinding? The motor? The gears?
Reki,
Harvey asked.
are you getting us out of here?
She didn't respond for a moment. Zilf didn't like the pause, and imagined the techs liked it even less.
Sorry,
She said.
handling multiple comms here. We're going to take you to the QM where the rest of our team is. Once we have you there, you'll be safe until we can extract.
Harvey glanced at one of the other techs before returning his gaze to Reki.
We can't extract yet.
Reki, even taller than Zilf in her suit, stooped over slightly. Her shadow seemed to envelop Harvey, and he trembled.
Don't worry,
She said.
we have a plan and we'll get you out.
She stood back to her full height and tapped her tool arm.
We got you out of the medical bay. We'll get you off the station, okay?
She glanced at the rest of the techs.
That goes for you too. Follow our orders. Take the precautions we ask and we'll get you back to the orbital.
Zilf frowned. He hadn't heard Reki talk like this before. Her voice had an edge of stress to it, as well as something akin to melancholy. Command must have given her new orders and she didn't like them. Either that or... Shark eats, he told himself, and Command is a shark too. If they thought the techs might pose a biological hazard, Zilf knew these terrified doctors and or nurses would never leave the station. Reki's final orders would probably be to incinerate them. Zilf shivered. His father's kind face, the eyes that held so much pain, so much love, so much sadness, flashed through his mind. The perfectly trimmed long beard framed his fierce eyes, but when his father spoke of Allah, Persia, or Elam, those same eyes glowed with excitement and passion rather than the dead-eyed stare of a man who'd nearly lost everything. Shark swims, shark eats, turtle thinks, Zilf said to himself. He could practically hear his father speaking those words. Be the shark now, the turtle later. The lift came to a jolting, grating halt, and Zilf thought he heard something crunch and crash in the shaft. He doubted they'd be using this lift again. The light above the door flashed yellow several times before a fine mist sprayed their suits, and the lights rose in enough lumens to activate his visor's filters. A moment later, the lights dimmed to their previous levels, and the light turned green above the hatch. The door slid aside in silence, revealing a brightly lit corridor. Since he was closest to the egress, Zilf stepped into the wide corridor, his plasma torch glowing. There was no need to clear corners. The corridor was just as wide as the lift. Zilf continued walking forward, his steps louder than he liked. He reached the end of the corridor and smirked. Another elbow. He cleared it just as Griggs had on the lower level and found it emptied into the QM bay. Zilf hissed a sigh of relief. Clear, he said over the comms.
Copy,
Reki said.
Griggs will move up.
Acknowledged, Zilf said. While he waited for Griggs to reach him, he scanned the ceiling and far bulkheads. He saw the top of the makeshift quarantine facility Li Zhao and Yuri had set up. Unlike the other enclosed sheds, which had no windows or portholes, The triage bubble glowed brighter and whiter than the inviting overhead lights. UV, Sylph thought. He guessed if Li Zhao had isolated the infection as viral, the best defense against its spread was to destroy any airborne pathogens with ultraviolet light. As Griggs's quieter footfalls approached, Sylph allowed himself another moment to scan the area and look for signs of the substance they found in the emergency tunnel, but he couldn't spot any. A quick check of the ceiling showed the vent grates all in place. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary.
How's it looking?
Griggs asked as he reached Sylph. Sylph shrugged. More normal than what's below. He pointed up at the ceiling. All the vents seemed to be in place.
Reki,
Griggs said over the squad channel.
You're clear. Copy.
Reki sounded relieved. Sylph had expected her to sound slightly exasperated, as though she'd already known the bay would be clear of any hazards. After all, wasn't this their redoubt? If any place was safe, this would be it. The full team comms came to life, and Reki said, Li Zhao, Yuri, we're here.
Copy,
Yuri said.
Ready for casualties.
Sylph blinked at that, not sure what Yuri meant by it. Was he talking about the text they'd led up here, or something else? Griggs had already moved 10 meters closer to the triage, his helmet turning slightly as he, like Sylph, looked for anything out of the ordinary. Like strangely colored snot, Sylph thought. The text passed Sylph, Reki just behind them. She told them over the external speakers to head to the triage. As they marched past her to Griggs, she paused next to Sylph.
Can you disable the lift?
She asked.
Make sure no one else can get up here?
Yes, Sylph said. But if we have to go down there again, she shook her head.
We won't. Do it.
Copy, Sylph said. He turned and walked back down the corridor to the lift, the door still open wide. The control panel flashed an ugly yellow that Sylph hadn't noticed before. When he left the lift, he hadn't exactly paid attention to what was going on behind him. Frowning, he reached the control panel and studied the text. Fault detected. Fault, right. As in the whole cursed thing was biding its time before it made its final descent to the lower levels, never to return. He connected to the interface, found the power relays, and sent the shutdown codes. A steady, angry red replaced the flashing warning light. Disabled. No one would be coming up the lift again. Reki, I'm done.
Copy, Sylph. Come join us at Triage.
He lingered just a moment, almost certain the red eye would turn green, the door would shut, and the grinding of the lift descending would rattle through the shaft. Nothing happened. Sylph turned and fell into a slow jog until he left the corridor and entered the bay. The triage, a cylinder that stood 4 meters high and 10 meters in diameter, contained 4 emergency beds, a slew of equipment Li Zhao and Yuri had ferried in, and a pile of body bags and EPBs. 2 of the techs had joined Li Zhao and Yuri inside the triage, while Griggs, Reki, and Harvey remained just outside its entrance.
4 solar days ago,
Harvey said through his external speakers. He seemed to hear Sylph approach and turned slightly, his head nodding in greeting. Sylph returned the nod, but said nothing.
Brought the refinery to a dead halt.
Refinery. That caught Sylph's ears. What were they refining? Reki was silent for a moment, and no one else spoke. She was on QE with command again, no doubt. She finally asked,
Harvey, have you been to the refinery?
He nodded.
I've been here since they opened after the reconstruction. Reconstruction?
Griggs asked.
What do you mean? The original construction crew, engineers, and maybe even the first batch of refinery workers were all transferred off-planet. Another crew came in to work on Station 2 and get Station 3 up and running. Once all that was done, I was transferred here 10 months ago. The facility's only been running for 10 months?
Reki asked. Harvey shrugged.
Can't tell you what I wasn't here for. They didn't even leave logs behind.
No records, Sylph thought. About par for Shinsho. Whenever they cleared out a facility, it was usually scrubbed clean of any records or history. The company had become so paranoid over the years that any mothballed deuterium refineries, element reactors, and even manufacturing facilities were disassembled, their constituent parts recycled, reconstituted, and shipped to another location, rarely leaving a trace in their wake. But to evacuate a working station just so a construction crew could augment Zhao 2 with another station made no sense. It would have been enormously expensive, not to mention the hours upon hours of training new workers required. What was so special about Station 3? Reki said over the squad channel.
Zilf, we're going to need one of the extra suits. Harvey is coming with us. Say again?
Griggs said.
We need Harvey in an EET. Armored training model, I think.
A suit like Griggs's, Zilf thought, but not nearly as sophisticated. Does he know how to drive one?
Not to my knowledge,
Reki said.
Can you dumb it down?
So long as he doesn't need to carry a real loadout, Zilf said. We can use him as a mule for extra supplies, though.
Do it,
Reki said.
Harvey's going to be our guide. Does he know that?
Yuri asked. Reki ignored the question.
Get moving. I'll send him to you in a few minutes.
Zilf turned away from the triage and headed back to the dock and the lift. As he walked, he continued scanning both the deck and the ceiling for signs of the mucousy ooze. Although he found none, it didn't make him feel any better. Chapter 10. Reki was playing this very close to the vest. She promised a full briefing when they returned from the lift, but that hadn't happened. Either the situation was so fluid she didn't know what to do next, or Command was fucking up everything she tried. Zilf wasn't sure he wanted to know the reasoning, he just wanted some damned information. Like, what had happened here? Perhaps the better question, his father's gentle voice said in his mind, is what's still happening. It's what the turtle would ask. The wise turtle, too large for sharks to eat, too majestic for humans to pluck from the ocean, although the shells of the dead were highly sought for their vibrant colors and their sweet smell, had its own mythos as the thinker. The turtle asks why. The shark asks nothing at all, thinks nothing at all. Once past the dock's airlock, he made his way to the EET container. It opened at his touch, and he stepped inside, the bright lights bathing every surface. Zilf headed to suit cylinder 6, connected to it, and checked the supply levels. Plenty of material. He could print 3 more suits if he wanted before having to raid the rest of the stock from the engineering container. He activated the printer interface and scrolled through the base models. There it was, EET training suit. He grinned despite himself. He too had once driven a training suit. Every EET had. Shinsho didn't exactly trust a novice with the more complex suits, both due to the expensive resource allocation as well as protection for the driver and their colleagues. No one wanted to be blasted by a novice, choosing the wrong menu item and accidentally activating a tool. Unlike Griggs's suit, which had a little extra height in its boots as well as longer arms, a training suit would fit Harvey like a second skin. Zilf quickly tossed away the typical training loadout, removing all tools from the design as well as augmenting and expanding the suit's pack capacity. Eliminating the tool array had made room for another 75 kilos of extra mass. Pack mule, no tools. Shit, Zilf thought. That also meant no defense. He tapped one armored foot against the deck as he turned that fact over and over again in his mind. Even a training model had armor and would protect against most human assailants and weapons made of steel, but enough projectiles and the suit would begin to deteriorate rapidly. Same went for environmental damage. Still, Zilf didn't like the idea of Harvey being completely defenseless. He added a stunner to the left wrist module, upped the comms array, and added 2 new options to the optic menu.
Zilf?
A voice called out from the container's entrance. Startled, Zilf nearly banged his head into the suit printer. He turned and stared at Harvey. The man had moved so quietly, Zilf hadn't heard him at all. That'll change in a few minutes, Zilf thought. Come inside, Zilf said.
Sorry if I...
Zilf waved the comment away, although he still had adrenaline pumping through his veins. Not a problem. I'm used to hearing an EET suit from 50 meters away. Harvey's head cocked to one side.
I'm not wearing an EET suit.
Exactly, Zilf said. He waved the man in. The medical tech stepped tentatively inside as though he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. Zilf would have smiled to reassure the man, but Harvey wouldn't see it. A few more steps, and he was far enough away from the container entrance. Zilf activated the door, and it swung shut with a bang. Harvey practically jumped. It's okay, Zilf said. The container has its own pressure, air, and decontamination system. Before we get you out of that suit, we need to clean you up a bit.
But I already went through the airlock and decontamination,
Harvey said. Zilf nodded. Call it prudence. Harvey shrugged.
Okay.
Zilf activated the container's sterilization routine. The overhead lights burned brightly with UV, and a white fog of gas hissed into the container. Harvey looked less than comfortable at this, shifting uneasily on his feet. The gas dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, and the powerful lights returned to their normal hue. Okay, Zilf said. You can take off your suit. Harvey didn't move. Zilf checked to make sure his external speakers were on. They were. Did you hear me? He asked. The tech nodded and reached for the suit's release before pausing.
You're sure it's safe? I don't want, well, you know.
Zilf did know. He didn't blame the man for being terrified of infection. Shit. Shinsho couldn't pay enough for Zilf to walk this station without an EET suit. All the residual air from the container was removed. We'd both been exposed to amounts of UV light guaranteed to destroy any known virus or bacteria. And because we're paranoid, the gas you saw annihilates anything biological. In other words, this container is without a doubt the most decontaminated portion of Zhao 2. Despite Zilf's speech, good as it was, Harvey's fingers remained just above the release. You're sure? I'm certain, Zilf said. With a sigh that vibrated the hazmat suit's speakers, the tech hit the release. Zilf heard the pressure inside the suit flush, the fabric expanding slightly. Harvey reached up and pulled off his helmet. He blinked in the harsh light before placing the helmet on the floor and hitting the torso release. The suit opened like a clamshell and he stripped it off.
Zilf.
The man's lime green skin suit looked as though Harvey had lived in it too long. Zilf guessed that was a fact.
5 minutes, I hope.
There's a cleaning suit in the corner there, Zilf said, pointing to the back of the container. Should also be able to find a spare skin suit. You're a bit shorter than Griggs, but roughly the same build. Shouldn't be a problem. Thank you, Harvey said gratefully, and stripped while walking to the cleaning stall. Zilf picked up the helmet as well as the well-used hazmat suit and placed them both in the recycler. Next time it ran, all the material that could be reclaimed for the printer would be converted to ink. The rest would be sanitized, sterilized, and crushed into powder. The same would happen to whatever washed off of Harvey's body.
Zilf.
Go, Zilf said.
How long until Harvey is fitted?
About 5 minutes, I hope, Zilf said. Have to make sure the...
He's got 10.
She sounded a little more relaxed than he had expected. He wasn't sure he liked that fact.
Once you have him ready, meet us back at the triage.
Acknowledged, he said. But boss, what's going on?
I'll let you know soon,
she said.
Out.
Zilf heard the chemical shower start up. 20 seconds later, the sound stopped and Harvey reappeared, his naked skin glowing from the layers of dead tissue that had been scraped from his body. Gooseflesh quickly appeared, leaving the man shivering. Feel better? Zilf asked. He felt bad he hadn't warmed up the container. Harvey found the spare jumpsuit and quickly stepped into it. Much, thank you. He zipped it up and the fabric molded to his shivering form. More than welcome, Zilf said. You ever operated an augmented suit before? No, Harvey said, the word drawn out. Like yours. Like mine, Zilf said, and pointed to the suit printer he'd prepped. You're going to step in there, and the machine is going to print the suit around you. Harvey narrowed his eyes. Is it going to hurt? Zilf grinned beneath his visor. Not at all. You'll see nothing, but you'll feel the layers as they're printed around you. He shook his head. Just relax. Keep your eyes closed if you like, and it'll be done in a couple of minutes. Harvey chuckled. I'll fall asleep. That would be good too, Zilf said. Come on. The shorter man walked into the printer. A holo display came to life in front of him with a short tutorial on how to line his body up inside the printer. Harvey squirmed and adjusted until each of the points in the figure glowed green. The light above the printer turned green as well. Ready? Zilf asked. Harvey looked afraid to move. Yes, he said through the side of his mouth. It took every ounce of control to keep Zilf from laughing. Here we go. Zilf activated the printer, and Harvey disappeared from view.
How many times have you done this?
Harvey asked in a breathy whisper. Nervous chatter. First time in a printer. Extreme stress. Zilf had a talker on his hands. More times than I can count, Zilf said. It's not hazardous.
Not what I meant,
Harvey said.
I meant traveling to fucked up places.
Same. We don't go to places that are functioning properly. Harvey laughed nervously.
And you're in the right place.
What happened here? Zilf asked. The printer progress diagram showed the inner layers had already bonded around Harvey's skin suit. Harvey was quiet for a moment.
I don't know what you're clear to hear. And trust me, there's a lot I don't know anyway.
Fair enough, Zilf said. How many hours were you in that suit?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even remember the last time I had sleep.
Your new suit will help a bit with that. Nutrients, analgesics, stimulants, whatever your body craves. You'll get it. Although, Zilf said, let's hope whatever we're doing doesn't take that long. You looked like you were ready to drop.
Say that again.
Harvey yawned.
Tuck me into a coffin for a long ride home.
The printer progress had reached 50%. Hey, what's with the ocean color? We saw it change from blue to red when we came down. Harvey said nothing for a moment.
I don't know for sure, although I'm betting it has something to do with the deuterium concentrations. Probably interacting with minerals or something like that.
Refinery, deuterium, fuel. Turtle thinks. Has anyone ever been in the water? Zilf asked casually. It was something he'd wondered about since they first came down the elevator.
I don't think so,
Harvey said.
Shinsho made it pretty clear personnel were not allowed to use any external airlock unless it was an emergency, and even then, we wouldn't have gotten in the water, just into a bubble.
Zilf heard a shrug in his voice.
Like you, I haven't seen the ocean except through the lift.
Zilf frowned. I didn't notice any portholes.
Because there aren't any.
Harvey said.
Not here, and not in the refinery. If you'd spent some time in the, barracks in a non-emergency capacity,
Harvey said that last sentence with ironic humor.
You would have noticed there were portholes. Large ones. But they've been replaced with patches of steel.
Patches? A status message appeared on his HUD. 75% suit construction. Zilf just had to keep Harvey talking until the suit was complete. After that, it might not be safe to continue this conversation. He knew the suits were recording, after all. Harvey's would be no exception.
Maybe the water eventually affected the transparent aluminum?
Maybe they weren't supposed to see something, he offered.
That's a valid scenario. You'll forgive me if I hope that's not the case.
Probably is, Zilf thought. The only question was, what didn't they want the crew to see? Some new classified piece of Shinsho tech? Erosion of the station's supports, or something xenological? 100% suit construction flashed on his HUD. A half-second later, Harvey's suit icon appeared on the comms menu, along with his location relative to Zilf. He disconnected from the printer's comms array and switched to Harvey's suit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Harvey said.
I mean copy.
Zilf grinned. Got it in too. The tutorial should appear in a second. I'll give you 2 minutes to run through it, and then we have to head back to triage.
Copy. Thanks for keeping me talking.
You're welcome, Zilf said, as he reached out and powered down Harvey's cylinder. He dug through the supply crates and quickly laid his hands on the loadout items. Harvey was going to carry some emergency mass.
Okay, done with the tutorial.
Zilf was still prepping a suit belt. Take a walk outside the container. Practice. It'll take getting used to. The suit won't let you fall right now, so don't be afraid to try different movements.
Okay,
Harvey said. Zilf added Harvey's cam feeds to his HUD while he continued building the belt and slotting in extra EPBs, energy cubes, and med supplies. Harvey stumbled forward, the suit's servos alternately locking and spinning to keep the novice from slamming to the deck. Harvey continued talking to himself as he stepped out of the container with an awkward gait.
I keep drifting left,
he said.
Can walk somewhat, but...
Give the suit a minute to adjust, Zilf said. One of your feet is at a slightly awkward angle. The firmware is catching up. Just keep walking. Zilf finished the belt, checked each fitting as well as the suit connection points, and put the belt over his shoulder. It didn't take him more than a few seconds to shut down the container's power, lock it, and turn just in time to see Harvey pivot with the suit and make a great attempt at a 90-degree turn. There you go, Zilf said. Try walking backwards a bit and use the rear cam feed. Just get used to it.
Okay,
Harvey said dubiously. But he did it, and managed to keep himself from looking like an EET that had had far too many recreational drugs before kidding out. Excellent. Now walk to me. Harvey complied, and only stumbled once. The suit's systems had been designed to slowly wean a new operator away from using the auto assist mode. The Shensho psychologists had figured out it was best not to let a new operator know the assistive system's status, to keep novices from failing out of fear. Zilf had to admit it had worked on him. For Harvey, it was the same.
"Guess I put a foot wrong that time,"
he said, a tinge of embarrassment in his voice. Zilf laughed out of recognition, then rolled his eyes. That wasn't aimed at you, he said gently. Memories of my first time. Sorry.
"I'd be laughing at me too,"
Harvey said.
"But you won't be laughing long."
He stepped within a meter of Zilf.
"Close enough?"
Yes, Zilf said. He squatted down, nearly taking a knee, and sealed the belt against the suit, the connection points immediately bonding. The belt was now part of the suit, its supply status and schematic part of Harvey's HUD. Now you're ready for a mission. Harvey sighed.
"And what is that?"
Don't know, Zilf said, and pointed to the airlock. Let's go find out.